beaten India, and we never even made it to the customs. There were 150,000 people at the airport to receive us. Oh. So you see, when you have these ups and downs in life, the most valuable lesson, you never lose your head when you go up, and you know the dynamics of coping with the bad times. So the difference in my philosophy. I was 9 years old when I wanted to be a test cricketer. I watched my first cousin. My mother took me to this match in Lahore. He scored a century against England. And I looked at him and I said, I want to be a test cricketer. And it never occurred to me that I would never become a test cricketer. I always thought it was a matter of time. I never realized the struggle I had to go through. Similarly, when my mother died of cancer, I didn't realize there was not a cancer hospital in Pakistan. And then I realized that, I could take my mother out for cancer treatment. What happened to the 95% of the people in the country? So that's when I decided I would build a cancer hospital. I have to confess I was never much of a charity type of a guy. I was not into really giving people, because basically the philosophy of professional sport is that there are no prizes for coming second. You do not have compassion for the losers. So it was actually watching that pain that I decided, watching my mother suffer, I decided I wanted to build this hospital. And I'd never realized how difficult it would be. 4 years of running around, I wasn't getting anywhere. And then Mr. Razak Daud is sitting here. He was on the board of governors, and he knows the meeting. We called 20 doctors of Lahore, top doctors, and said, look, how do we go about building this cancer hospital? And this is after 4 years of running around like a headless chicken. And out of 20, 19 said you can't build a cancer hospital in Pakistan. And one said that you might be able to build it, you cannot give free treatment to poor cancer patients because it's very expensive treatment. So, my dream was to build the hospital. And so what I went through, the things I had to do, was the greatest learning experience in my life. And eventually when we built the hospital, just to give you an idea now, the hospital was built in 700 million rupees. The annual loss the hospital suffers for treating 75% of the cancer patients free, which was my dream. It wasn't just the dream of building a hospital. It was that poor people should get free treatment. The annual loss is 10 billion rupees. Hospital bill for 700 million, annual loss is 10 billion. So imagine, had I had someone told me that, look, this is what you, after building it, you will have to spend 10 billion collecting every year. And then I'd go to politics. Everyone laughed at me. There's no precedence of, in a two-party system, a third party coming through. There's no precedent. Look at England. Look at the US. You can't break through because they are entrenched. They have systems, a third party, an outsider. So for 15 years, people laughed at me. 15 years, I was butt of all the jokes in politics. It was me sincerely going around, look, we want good people to come. Let's all good people get together. And I didn't realize that the good people were the most cowardly people. They were scared of coming into politics. So anyway, the thing is, the Almighty has given all of us tremendous potential. We are His greatest creation, Ashraful Makhluqat. Problem is, we don't know this. And we let ourselves down. Because that potential, we only achieve that potential if we know how to struggle. We only achieve that potential if we have these big dreams. And whatever the human mind can picture can happen. This is how much potential all of us have. Problem we face is that we give up on the way. When the bad time comes, we put up our hands and say, we have a plan B. The human potential, the bigger the dream, the bigger the struggle, but you achieve it when you do not have a plan B. There is no going back. You have to burn your boats. Wherever you go after a big ambition, you should never, never, never think of compromising on that dream. So now I come to my dream of Pakistan. You see, I believe, and I always believe, because I grew up in 60s when you cannot imagine the optimism we grew up with about Pakistan. It was one of the fastest growing countries. Our head of state, Ayub Khan, went to the United States. The president of the US came to receive him at the airport. He had a ticker tape reception, open car, people throwing, how they greet those people in the US. He goes to England, he's treated like royalty. Pakistan, there was hope. People believed the country had potential. It was the fastest growing country in the 60s in Asia. We were a model for development. South Korea came to Pakistan, Malaysia. They looked upon us. In HSN, I studied with Malaysian princes. Our university degrees were recognized everywhere. So I grew up with this thing. We had this hope. So we let ourselves down. And we let ourselves down because, unfortunately, we came up with, first of all, we could not, our democracy couldn't get grounded in Pakistan. When the democracy faltered, we had the army. When the army came in, they wanted their own puppets, who were not leaders. And so we went into this musical chairs. But I always believed that the moment Pakistan had good governance, this country would rise. And the moment Pakistan went back to its original vision, there was a reason Pakistan was made. We keep forgetting why was it made. The reason given by the founding fathers, the ideological father of Pakistan, the great Iqbal, and what our great leader, Jinnah, Qaid-e-Azam, brilliant mind, the most outstanding barrister in British India, highest paid barrister, brilliance, man of complete integrity. They all, if you look at the vision of the founding fathers, they wanted Pakistan to be a humane, just society, a welfare state. And we deviated so far from the vision. And nations without a vision die. Why should people want to be part of a nation if there's no vision? So I always believe that the moment our vision, the reason why this country was made, if we could restore that vision, this country has more potential than any other country. Reason why this country has so much potential? Because the best resource are the people. We have dynamic people. I mean, I give you an example. When I used to be playing cricket, India is 7 times the size of Pakistan. We regularly thrashed them. Pakistan had squash players with there were more squash courts in Oxford University. Pakistan had 2 squash champions for 10 years each. Our hockey, hardly financed to anything. We had always the talent. People of Pakistan not just had the talent, we had the resources. I mean, since I've been in power, I'm amazed what the resources the country has. Just out of the 14 copper and gold fields we have in Reko, just 2 of them. And guess who told me this foreign company which we are in litigation against. This chairman, I was speaking to him, he told me, he said, do you realize that these two, the blocks, the profit is $100 billion. Just the profit of two blocks. This is just, I didn't know that. And we have coal reserves. We should never have shortage of electricity. Our own coal reserves. We have the most fertile land. When I went to China, they told, I looked at the productivity of China. It's 3-4 times of Pakistan. We have sixth number of cow and buffaloes in our country. We are number 6. Our per cow liter of milk is 6 liters. In China, it's 24 liters, 20 liters. Denmark is 30 liters. So what we have done is that we neglected research in Pakistan. We neglected the basics. Not spending money on our human resources, not spending money on education, not worrying about the education of the masses. It was only for a tiny elite. Which country does it? That only 800,000 children go to English medium schools, 3.3 million children in Urdu medium schools, 2.5 million children in Dini madrasas. No one paid any attention to it. So now, my vision of Pakistan, we need to return to make it into a welfare state, inclusive development. Our whole idea is now that after the 60s is the second government which is going to spend money on industrialization. We are giving incentives, encouragement. We want to promote industrialization because that will create wealth, and from that wealth creation we want to spend money on the bottom tier of our society. So we have already, despite limited resources, we have the most ambitious poverty alleviation plan called SAMAA. We have allocated in very difficult times 190 billion rupees, the highest amount ever for poverty alleviation. My belief is that if we can concentrate on the bottom section of our society, the government facilitates investors, industrialists, makes it easy for them to do business. In our first year, we have gained 28 places in ease of doing business. Improve our governance system. I honestly believe that we will release the potential of our people. Let me tell you where the challenges are. The number one challenge is, and by the way, I was reading a blog of Prime Minister Mahathir Mohamad. Now remember, he is probably the greatest statesman of the Muslim world. His achievement in transforming Malaysia, everyone knows about it. Now, and 20 years he was in power. And when I read his blog, he might as well have been talking about Pakistan. He said the problem they're facing is from an entrenched, corrupt status quo, which has been removed after 50 years, one-party system. Same us. We are up against a corrupt status quo which ruled Pakistan for 30 years. And they are entrenched, and they have linkages, people who benefited from a corrupt system. So our biggest challenge is facing these people, spreading gloom and doom every day. Every day some sort of scandal comes up which is blown up, all orchestrated. Basically, they do not want the government to succeed, because us succeeding means not just them out of power, but they will end up in jails, which some of them already are. Malaysia faces exactly the same thing. Secondly, we face deteriorating, degenerated institutions. What corruption does, number one thing, what the corrupt do is they destroy state institutions, because that's the only way they can make money. If I want to make money, I have to hamstring all institutions that dispense justice. So that's a big problem. You can destroy state institutions very quickly, but to restore them takes time. So we are in the process. It's a slow process, but gradually, we institution by institution, we are restoring them. The other problem we face are these huge debts accumulated by the previous government. Our first year, the total amount of tax we collected, which was 4 trillion, 2 trillion went to debt servicing. How do you fund health, education, everything when you just are left with this small amount of tax collection? This year we have to, our debt servicing is 3 trillion. The other problem we face is actually the biggest challenge is the energy sector. We have this huge circular debt in electricity. And because of this, which is almost, I think, 1.5 trillion, 1.7 trillion. A 1.7 trillion circular debt means every year we have this huge interest on this debt. So that is a big challenge, and we have decided when we go back, we will get all the stakeholders. We are going to discuss how, because we cannot put more burden on the consumers of electricity, because these interest payments. So this is the other challenge, and of course, the problem is that you give expensive electricity to the industry, to especially the small medium industry. So it reduces our competitiveness in exports. So this is a big challenge. The direction we have taken is industrialization, which means wealth creation. Secondly, export-oriented growth. So far, our problem have been that our growth rate goes up, and then we have a bit of a boom, and then we go bust because we then end up with a big current account deficit, and then we have to go to the IMF. This time, what we're trying to do is, the big difference is export-led growth. And so this change, of course, is quite painful because the growth rate has to come down. People are hurting in Pakistan. As I keep mentioning, I've never faced so much abused and hammered so much in the media as I have in the past one and a half years. Being in public, I for 40 years used to criticism because when you lost, you knew what you were in for. When you won, but this 1.5 years has been exceptional. I really had to develop a very thick skin. In fact, thank God, mercifully, I know that all the dynamics of bad times. So the first thing you do is do not read the newspapers. And secondly, do not, whatever happens, do not.
हुकूमत मुल्क की तरक्की के लिए काम कर रही है, ये कहना था वज़ीर-ए-आज़म इमरान खान का डेवोस में ब्रेकफास्ट मीट तकरीब में खिताब।